All right, today we're diving into a really complex group of conditions, connective tissue diseases. This is where the very system that's designed to protect you, your immune system, can actually turn against you and become your body's biggest problem. So let me ask you this. What could possibly connect a specific rash on your face with feeling completely wiped out all the time and having joints that just ache? I mean, they seem like they're from different planets, right? But they can actually be clues to the very same story happening inside your body. And that story, well, it's basically an internal civil war. It's a really powerful way to think about it. Imagine your body's own defense forces are mistakenly attacking their own home territory. This one idea is absolutely central to understanding everything we're about to cover. Okay, so let's get right into it. To really wrap our heads around what's happening, we first need to understand the basics of this internal conflict. What exactly are these diseases? For a lot of people, it all starts with this collection of symptoms that can feel super vague and just confusing. We're not talking about just feeling a little tired. This is a deep, overwhelming fatigue. It's joint pain that just doesn't quit, a low-grade fever that lingers, maybe losing weight without trying. These are often the first mysterious signals that something's not right. The culprit behind all these symptoms has a name: autoimmunity. And honestly, the best analogy for it is friendly fire. Think about it. Your immune system is this incredibly smart army, trained to hunt down and destroy invaders like viruses. But with autoimmunity, something goes wrong. There's a malfunction. It gets confused and starts attacking your own healthy tissues. And this chart just lays it out so clearly. A normal immune response is simple, right? It targets an invader and you're protected. But in an autoimmune response, the target is you. The outcome isn't protection, it's ongoing inflammation and, over time, real tissue damage. So that immediately leads to the biggest question of all. Why? Why does this even happen? What causes the immune system to make such a huge and devastating mistake? And the tough answer is, it's complicated. There is almost never one single smoking gun you can point to. Instead, what the science tells us is that it's more like a perfect storm, where a bunch of different factors have to come together in just the right, or wrong, way to set the whole thing off. We can break this perfect storm down into 3 key ingredients. First, you need a genetic predisposition. This means you're born with certain genes, like the ones listed here, that don't guarantee you'll get sick, but they do make you more susceptible. Second, you need an environmental trigger. This is some kind of external event that comes along and basically flips the switch. And third, those 2 things combine to cause the immune malfunction, where the system just loses its self-control and the attack begins. So, what kind of triggers are we talking about? Well, it could be a whole bunch of things. A common virus, like Epstein-Barr, just getting too much sun exposure, certain medications, or even exposure to chemicals can be the thing that flips the switch. Hormones, especially estrogen, are thought to play a really big role too, which helps explain why these conditions are so much more common in women. So with this really messy picture of vague symptoms and a whole host of possible causes, how does a doctor even begin to figure out what's going on? Well, this is where medicine becomes a lot like detective work. It's all about piecing together the clues. And a huge part of this detective work is telling the difference between symptoms and signs. A symptom is what you feel and tell your doctor, like my joint's ache. A sign, on the other hand, is what your doctor can actually see or measure for themselves, like observing that the joint is physically swollen and warm. Both pieces of the puzzle are absolutely vital. All right, let's look at some of the most telling signs, the biggest clues. First up is the malar rash. This is the classic butterfly rash that spreads across the cheeks and the bridge of the nose. When a doctor sees this, it's a very strong clue pointing toward lupus. Next, we have something called Raynaud's phenomenon. This is a really dramatic reaction to cold temperatures. The blood vessels in the fingers and toes just clamp down, and it causes this really distinct 3-color change. They go white from no blood, then blue as oxygen drops, and finally bright red as the blood rushes back in. Another signature sign is sclerodactyly. With this one, the skin over the fingers becomes really tight, shiny, and feels hard. You might not even be able to pinch it. This is a telltale feature of a condition called scleroderma. And finally, we have Gottron's papules. These are very, very specific. They're these purplish, kind of scaly bumps that show up right over the knuckles. When a doctor spots these, it's a major clue that points toward an inflammatory muscle disease called dermatomyositis. Okay, so we've looked at the clues, we've gathered the evidence. Now it's time to meet the suspects. Let's put some actual names to these conditions we've been describing and look at the main types of connective tissue diseases. A really helpful way to organize the major players is with this mnemonic, clinical. And as you can see, this covers a huge range of conditions. You've got scleroderma, which is all about that skin tightening, and then you have something like lupus, which can affect pretty much any organ system in the entire body. The big takeaway here is that while they're all related by autoimmunity, each one has its own unique fingerprint. Getting a diagnosis can be incredibly overwhelming. There's no doubt about it. But it's also the very first step towards taking back control. So the big question is, what now? How do you manage these incredibly complex conditions? Managing these conditions really requires a shift in how you think about them. For most of these, we're not talking about a one-and-done cure. The goal is long-term control. It's about calming the disease down, protecting your organs from damage, and, most importantly, making sure you can maintain your quality of life. And the strategy to get there is really comprehensive. It starts with lifestyle. Things like sun protection are a huge deal, especially in lupus. Then you have medications to control specific symptoms. But the real core of the treatment is often immunosuppression, using powerful drugs to quiet down that overactive immune system. And finally, constant monitoring with your doctor is key to track how things are going and catch any problems early. And that brings us to the end. We've gone from these mysterious early symptoms to the science of that civil war inside the body, all the way to how it's managed. But it leaves us with a really powerful and hopeful question for the future. As we get smarter about the genetics and better at identifying those environmental triggers, could we one day step in and prevent this civil war from ever even starting? Just think about that. Thanks for joining me.